You are listening to Insights from the Conference Board.
Hello, my name is Chuck Mitchell. I'm Director of Knowledge, Content, and Quality here at the Conference Board, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to this edition of Insights, a podcast series brought to you by the Conference Board. I will be sitting down today with Principal Researcher in our Human Capital practice, Robin Erickson, and Amy Yee, a Human Capital Researcher here at the Conference Board. Robin and Amy are co-authors of our new report, Artificial Intelligence for Talent Acquisition. We've embarked on our own journey of sorts here at the Conference Board, looking at the impact of artificial intelligence across HR functions. The first report in the series, Separating the Potential from the Hype, has recently been published. So let's get to the issue at hand with our two experts. And I can assure you that Robin and Amy are both indeed humans and not machines. Good morning, Amy and Robin, and welcome. Let's start with the big question. Robin, when it comes to AI and HR, the future is now, right? So what's the reality versus the hype out there? Help us set the context. There seems to be a lot of confusion over what AI is and what it isn't.
Thanks, Chuck. Like leaders across the organization, HR professionals often fall prey to two common misperceptions about artificial intelligence. The first is that any process, task, or job that is performed by technology today is an example of AI. The second is that there's no clear consensus about the definition of AI, only conflicting opinions, which gives people license to use the term however they wish, especially vendors who are trying to sell the different technologies. While there's a smattering of truth to both ideas, they are for the most part inaccurate. So the Conference Board has defined artificial intelligence as technology that mimics human thinking by making assumptions, learning, reasoning, problem solving, or predicting with a high degree of autonomy. So one of the other things that AI is not automation. Automation refers to the capability of performing simple, repetitive, and fixed tasks that can be completed without human intervention. But automation doesn't involve new ways of doing things, and so it's usually considered the precursor of AI. In our artificial intelligence series, we provide a simple framework to explain different shades of AI. The first is assisted intelligence, which serves humans by enabling them to work better or more efficiently. Humans continue to perform the tasks, manage the processes, and make the decisions. The second is augmented intelligence, and that combines human and machine capabilities to capitalize on the strengths of each. The technology continuously learns from new data, improving its accuracy over time. And the third and most far-reaching is autonomous intelligence. Think of a self-driving car, but that refers to a state in which technology operates independently of humans. Not only must the system be able to adapt, learn, exercise judgment, and make decisions completely on its own, humans must trust that it can do so. And in the case of self-driving cars, that's a lot of trust.
It is indeed a lot of trust. And I guess one of the important aspects of getting those definitions of artificial intelligence right across the organization is to make sure that everybody's talking about the same thing, right? You don't want someone to be talking about artificial intelligence when they really mean something like automation, right?
Correct.
So that's an important part of it. So, Amy, you say in your report that 80% of the AI-enabled HR solutions already out there address talent acquisition issues, right? So how is AI transforming talent acquisition, and what are organizations actually using? How are they using AI to drive real results in the talent acquisition field?
Thanks, Chuck. And yes, we did find that most existing AI offerings are focused on recruiting now. So how is AI transforming talent acquisition? I can give you a few examples. For example, AI-enabled platforms can find resumes based on job requirements and schedule interviews with candidates. We also find that a lot of AI-powered tools can assess candidates based on the quality of the role fit and also their readiness to switch jobs, and then rank order for the hiring managers and the recruiters to make final decisions. So you also asked about the business results. So we find that AI actually brings a lot of benefits, not only to the talent acquisition function, but also the entire organization. Just to name a few, for example, AI technologies can increase efficiency of recruitment processes. It can improve employer branding, can enhance the hiring experience for both the candidates and also the hiring managers, can also optimize sourcing, and enhance the quality of the candidate pool. So while generating all of these positive outcomes, it can also drive down the costs for the organization, which is really important for companies. So in our report, we listed 12 stages of recruitment where AI has been adopted. So for each of the stages, we provide specific examples of how different shades of AI, as Robin just mentioned, support these recruitment activities. So for our audiences who are interested in learning about the use cases, we highly encourage them to check out our report.
Yeah, I saw some of the use cases and I thought it was interesting. I mean, reducing time to hire, really significant costs. I mean, it's just the benefits really seem to come fairly quickly once you get the hang of how to use AI in the recruitment stage. So,
well, and not only that, but another important point is that of all of the HR solutions that are powered by AI, 80% of them are in talent acquisition. And so that is something that then means that it's being used the most, AI is being used the most in talent acquisition. And that's why, as Amy mentioned, we have the 12 stages.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, is there how does it end up that talent acquisition becomes the initial, if you will, premier use of AI? Is there a reason behind that, either of you?
I think it's because there's so much technology already within talent acquisition. And recruitment, just like everything else, everyone's trying to do more with less. And so where AI can help, those platforms can help recruiters and coordinators, sourcers, that sort of thing, it's very much needed.
Yeah, it's a good point. So, Robin, let's dig a little deeper here. Can you walk us through an AI-enabled pre-hire assessment or the interview process? It all sounds a little like science fiction or the coming of the robot apocalypse, but walk us through how organizations are doing it in this pre-hire assessment and interview process.
Sure. So Amy and I actually were able to write 3 different case studies, and one of them was about how an organization basically fixed their pre-hire assessments and interview process. Our case study starts with a US-based automotive retailer that realized its average time to fill positions was over 100 days. And some requisitions were actually open for more than 2 years, which, as you can imagine, is a huge issue. To ameliorate the situation, though, the firm decided to implement an AI-powered platform that specializes in candidate assessment and video interviewing. So in just a few minutes, this platform can screen the resumes, analyze the results of the pre-hire assessment, and automatically invite the candidates who meet the minimum qualifications to an on-demand video interview that's conducted by the platform. And this is where you're using assisted intelligence. To ensure a fair and structured process, all the candidates applying for the same role actually receive the same questions during the interview. So it's one of the fairest ways to interview candidates because they're all answering the same set of questions. The AI scoring system then can rank the top candidates based on its analysis of the interview, providing insights and suggestions to help recruiters make more informed decisions. And this is using augmented intelligence, as we explained at the beginning, around the different gradations of AI. And here's the results. Since the tool was introduced, cost per hire has decreased from $630 for each technician to $450, so almost a $200 decrease per role. And the time to fill has dropped 45 days. And what's more, the quality of hire has improved as a result of the new platform, as the new sales executives sell on average 4 more cars per month than their peers.
You know, I think that's a really significant point, is the notion that the quality of the hire itself it seems to be, the machines do it better than humans, right? Is that, that's one of the marvels about AI, right? That it must take a lot of trust in the system itself in order to trust that judgment that the AI is making the platform is making when it ranks candidates and those sorts of things. That must be a tough hill to climb, I think, to some extent, to get that trust going, right?
Definitely. I think we're going to talk about that later in the podcast.
Okay, thanks, Amy and Robin. And at this point, we're going to take a short break for some quick announcements and be back in just a minute to continue discussing the latest insights on AI and talent acquisition.
Can you, your team, or your company benefit from insights such as the ones provided in this podcast? They are immediately available when you join the Conference Board, a membership-based think tank that delivers trusted insights for what's ahead. Reaching across industries and geographies, we bring together our noted experts, senior executives from the world's largest companies, and nonpartisan practical research to help you address your most important business issues. Our membership packages are tailored to your organization's unique needs and budget. To learn more about our offerings, go to www.conferenceboard.org and click Join on the top bar to connect with one of our product specialists.
Hello again, Robin and Amy, and thanks for taking the time to share your insights on AI and its impact on how organizations source talent. Welcome to the second half of our podcast. Now, Amy and Robin, we talked about the benefits. How about the risks? What are the ethical implications for all this?
Sure. Yeah, there are several major risks associated with AI implementation. As it comes to talent acquisition, I can start with the first one, which is data privacy. So protecting data privacy is not just a technical issue. So failure to do so could have financial implications for the organization, can also impair the employer branding, and also more profoundly impair the trust between the employer and the employee. So the data privacy actually is more critical for talent acquisition because talent acquisition function deals with not only the internal candidates' data, but also that of external candidates. So when companies and vendors are developing and deploying AI-powered recruitment tools, they really should incorporate the data privacy laws or regulations into the design and implementation of their tools, such as EU's GDPR principles. And it's not just EU. For example, in the United States, Illinois legislature recently just passed the AI Video Interview Act, which requires all the job candidates to be clearly informed of the AI-driven assessment technology in their interview process. And also they should provide written consent prior to the interviews. So data privacy is a really important issue that organizations should consider when launching AI technologies. And there are a couple other risks that we identified in our report, and I'll turn to Robin to share some of those.
Thanks, Amy. The first is around transparency. And when it comes to the algorithms that support artificial intelligence, what's inside the black box really does matter. It's the question that HR leaders should raise in the vendor evaluation and selection process. Basically, the transparency of AI exposes the system's processes to scrutiny. It can help avoid unnecessary accidents or errors and will eventually enhance the HR and talent acquisition's trust in and understanding of the AI-enabled tools. The outcomes of AI-powered technologies need to be reviewed by humans, and talent acquisition professionals should ensure transparency in how the systems and their underlying algorithms are making those recruitment-related decisions. Then, throughout the recruiting process, the candidates also have the right to be informed whenever they are interacting with or being assessed by AI, just as Amy had mentioned with the new act in Illinois requiring written consent. So the other risk that we found was around bias, and this is a really big one, and it comes up a lot when people think about artificial intelligence, because humans inherently hold unconscious bias, which often results in poor judgment, unfair decisions, and inaccurate results. And even when you think you're not being unconsciously biased, you are. So if you're interested in that, there's a lot of podcasts on that topic. So everyone thinks then that AI technology isn't biased. And for example, technology such as standard video interviewing can help alleviate inconsistency and reduce bias in the hiring process because every candidate's given the same interview questions. But it's wrong to assume that AI-powered tools are bias-free. And this is because most AI algorithms are developed by learning from historical data, and they inherit the implicit bias from previous data processing that was done by humans. So algorithms with bias can lead to unintended consequences in sourcing, screening, selection, and other areas in TA, and we actually often see reports in the news media about this issue. So companies need to question whether the training data that AI vendors are using to create their algorithms actually reflect the relevant context, including industry, geography, and workforce demographics, as well as doing regular checks for bias in the outcomes.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think one of what we hear from our diversity and inclusion councils, for example, is that the bias that is inherent in all the data sets that exist today, it would be impossible to go back in and fix 5 years, 10 years, 20 years of data. So the solution really lies with the development of the algorithm itself, right? So you have to tweak the algorithm to eliminate the bias would probably be the approach, right?
And checking the outcomes. So for example, if you have a bunch of sourcers who never looked at specific universities just because they didn't think those universities had good candidates, if you're training your AI algorithms on that data, you're going to tell the AI not to look at those universities. But that could be fallacious, that could be personal bias. And so you need to then both look at the algorithms that you're creating, but then also review the results.
Yeah, it seems that when we talk about working with those kind of algorithms for talent acquisition, that in the development of those algorithms, you need, let's say, the tech head, the programmer, but you also need someone with a little human empathy, some on the social science side, right? It's a kind of co-creation. For that algorithm, is that how organizations that you talk to approaching that algorithm development?
Not yet. What I've heard is that organizations are checking the outcomes. So they're actually, for a lot of these tools, they'll have their recruiters do the same job that they ask the AI to do, and then compare the results to see what, is the AI tool providing the results they would expect or not, and what's wrong or right with them.
Right. Amy, would you feel comfortable being interviewed by a machine?
It sounds a little bit scary, but I welcome the new experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. It takes a comfort level, but candidates, and especially in newer generations that are entering the workforce, are probably way more comfortable with that type of interviewing process than previous generations. So, but as you say, right, the warnings and the legislation starting to catch up with the reality in the field. So that's an interesting point. So in the course of the research and interaction with the practitioners of the conference board here, regarding AI and talent acquisition, is there something that surprised either of you negatively or positively in the course of your research?
Yeah, that's a great question. What surprised us? I would say instead of surprising us, probably we could discuss something that really important in the talent acquisition process, AI implementation process, but some organizations might have overlooked. So some of these findings might be surprising to our audiences. The first thing I would like to discuss is culture. So it's important for organizations to have a culture that embraces change. So organizations should understand that AI adoption doesn't happen within a day. So it actually takes a lot of efforts to ensure successful implementation of AI technologies. It involves a lot of changes and communications with different stakeholders, and also multiple iterations of the technology before the platform goes live. So in our report, we strongly recommend organizations to conduct pilot tests with a small cohort of stakeholders, such as the candidates, recruiters, and hiring managers, before they launch and roll out the platform across the entire organization. We also encourage them to identify and train some change champions to help drive and support the entire AI implementation process. And of course, we believe that organizations should monitor the progress and also measure the results and gather continuous feedback from recruiters, hiring managers, and candidates to continuously improve the technology. So I think culture is definitely one of the most important things for AI implementation. The other thing is scalability issue. That's a challenge for organizations while they adopt AI, which they might have overlooked in the process. We understand that training algorithm actually requires a substantial amount of data and people analytics resources. So scalability might be an issue for organization as AI becomes more prevalent. we also noticed that at a lot of organizations that their HR and recruitment systems are not integrated. So back in 2018, the Conference Board did a study on GDPR and HR, and we found that a lot of large organizations that they had over 100 HR systems that didn't talk to each other. They are disconnected. So these disconnected systems actually pose additional complexity when organizations thinking about scaling the technology across the entire organization. So scalability is another issue that organizations should be mindful in the implementation process.
Robin, anything that surprised you?
For me, the one that Amy just mentioned around scalability was really interesting to me because that wasn't something that I had thought of before we first started working on this report. The other is that, especially in talent acquisition, HR leaders, talent acquisition leaders, they're bombarded by emails from vendors. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of vendors in this space, and most of them can't scale. They're small. They're just getting started. And so for bigger organizations that are looking at tools that will work in different languages, that will work around the world with different skill sets, it's a challenge. And so that actually was one of the bigger surprises for me.
Yeah. It's interesting. So, Amy, I think you touched on a point that is kind of interesting. And when you're talking about piloting an AI and talent acquisition project is really about agile methodologies and agile coming to HR, right? Which is another issue that our members talk about frequently. You're giving them an agile plan, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, any words of advice for the practitioner or an organization that is just starting on the AI journey, or specifically in the talent acquisition space? What would you tell them that they need to do first?
So, Chuck, as I mentioned earlier, talent acquisition is the sub-function of HR that uses the most AI. And when we asked talent acquisition leaders if they were worried, would the recruiters go away? Would that role go away? They said that they thought that the talent acquisition function would undergo a change, a substantial transformation, actually, and that the essential qualities of a recruiter would have to change. So in the future, responsibilities of a recruiter will go from focusing only on filling positions to proactively providing a strategic candidate sourcing and relationship management. And what we mean by that is that the recruiter will have the time to talk to the candidates to try to sell the organization. So we heard people talking, some talent acquisition leaders talking about wanting their recruiters to have a more strategic role, to become a better trusted advisor with their hiring managers so that they could better help the hiring manager understand who's out there. The other thing is that many of the leaders have recognized the importance of upskilling the marketing and relationship management skills and are moving in that direction.
Yeah.
And I just want to reiterate what Robin just said about recruiters really need to have a solid understanding of the data and also understand how the insights are derived from the data and also from the machine. So the other thing is that we actually noticed that some organizations start to have this new approach. They actually hire specialists to work on the recruitment technology to help conduct tool evaluations, lead pilots, and manage user adoption. So that's something that some organizations could consider when they launch in AI across the entire organization.
Well, thanks. That's it's a new dawn, if you will, right, in the talent acquisition space, all courtesy of AI, right? So, Robin, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, the Conference Board has launched on a series of AI for HR. Tell us a little bit about what's coming up next after the talent acquisition report.
Sure. So we published the AI for HR, separating the potential from the hype. So if you're interested in an overview report, that's the overview. Talent acquisition was the first sub-function, sub-report to be published. But we're looking next at rewards and recognition, at coaching, onboarding, talent reskilling, as we actually had talked about the importance of that, HR ops, productivity, diversity and inclusion, career development, learning and development, and engagement. So as you can see, we have a long road ahead of us to look at AI in all these areas.
Yeah, that notion of AI and coaching, I mean, I've always wanted to learn at the arm of a robot, right? So that's kind of interesting. We look forward to the rest of that series, and I think it's going to have a big impact on the function and should be a great help for practitioners. So unfortunately, our time's up today. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and a big thanks here to Robin Erickson and Amy Yee for sharing their insights on what's clearly becoming a hot topic in the world of HR. So I hope you enjoyed our podcast today, and if you'd like to find out more, please visit our website. That's www.conference-board.org/podcasts for more interactive programs. And you can also find our podcast on platforms like iTunes and Spotify. So again, thanks for joining us, and goodbye.
This has been Insights from the Conference Board.